Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Today I'm going to be doing an unboxing as well as a comparison and a first impressions on the brand new D&D 5th edition starter set, the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. Before I get into it, I just want to state for the record that this was something that was sent to me by Wizards of the Coast for the purposes of doing a review video on. So I want to thank them for sending this to me. I've been really looking forward to this from the moment it was first announced. However, as is always the case, they are not influencing the video, they're not scripting it or demanding to pre-screen it. The opinions that I express in this video are 100% completely and totally my own. I also want to be very clear that I have not had a chance to read the adventure yet when I'm doing this video. So that is going to be a separate video that I want to have take place about a week after this one, mainly because I don't want to spoil the adventure for people that are picking this up day one and wanting to have the opportunity to run this. So the full review is yet to come. This is just going to be my first impressions. But taking a look at the box, the cover looks really, really cool here. You got the blue dragon with characters reminiscent of the D&D cartoon show from the 80s with like the Hank the Ranger looking character and the Diana the thief acrobat looking character, which is really, really cool. Here on the side, we have a brass dragon, I think. I'm not as good with the metallic dragons because I rarely use them. And we got our blue dragon on this side here. On the back, we have our contents. You will notice we are back to the set of 6 dice, which I will talk a little bit more about later in the video. But also included, we have a 48-page adventure book, a 32-page rule book for characters levels 1 through 3, 5 pre-gen characters, and 6 game dice. Because they have like Hank and Diana on the front here, I really do kind of hope that the characters are based off of the D&D cartoon show, but we'll see. They were all humans, so they probably won't. But it'd still be kind of cool to have nonetheless. So here we have our 6 dice. The blue kind of like swirl pattern dice, which again, well, I'm going to compare this dice set to the ones that come in the starter set for 2014, as well as the D&D Essential set. So I will just set these aside for now. And here we have our 48-page adventure booklet, and there is Eric the Cavalier. I really hope that they model the characters off of this. Again, I don't want to spoil too much here, but we'll just take a look a little bit through this just to see. We do have full color maps, which are great, especially for beginners, again, to make things a little bit easier to read. That is an awesome owlbear art. And yeah, cool stuff overall. There's a little blue dragon. You got Presto, Diana, and Eric there. So again, cool stuff. We'll see. When we get to the characters, we shall see. But yeah, so some cool stuff in there. We got ourselves a spore servant octopus. Okay, that's interesting. And on the back, we just got a couple more creatures there. It does look like the creatures in this are different from what was in the original starter set, which is nice to see. I remember the Stranger Things box set had the exact same monsters as the 2014 Lost Mine of Phandelver starter set, and that was really underwhelming. Here we have our rule book. So we have our table of contents right here on the front cover. We'll just again flip through this really quickly, just the basic stuff you'd expect to see in here. Explanations of the attributes, how to roll the d20, how to make saving throws and attack rolls. I like the the sketch art there. That's really cool. Movement, breaking up your move, so it's kind of cool that is included in there. It looks like there's more in this rule booklet than we had in the original starter set, so it's kind of nice to see some of the extra things that they kind of put in here. The different types of attacking, the different actions you can take in a round, shoving a character, unarmed strikes, that's cool to see. Mounted combat and underwater combat. All right, I was not expecting that. I was not expecting maybe the underwater combat just because this takes place on an island, but I wasn't expecting to see those in the starter set rule set. Again, some really cool sketch art there that I like. Equipment, we've got our armor table. It looks like they actually include the amount of time it takes to don the armor properly right in the armor table as well, which is really cool to see. Our weapons, adventuring gear, spells. This is only for levels 1 through 3, so they're not going to have a huge amount of spells. But they got some basic stuff in here. You got like things like Blast, Comprehend Languages is a good utilitarian spell. Flaming Sphere, of course, you're going to have like Mage Armor, Magic Missile, Ray of Frost for your good cantrip, Healing Word, Cure, I think Heal was in there as well. Sanctuary, Shield of Faith, Spiritual Weapon, Thunderwave, and Thaumaturgy. And we have our conditions. And last but not least, we have our characters. So we've got our Halfling Rogue. So yeah, these aren't going to be based off the cartoon. But we have a Halfling Rogue, which is pretty standard with the criminal background. Oh my good. Okay, we have a Paladin. This is awesome. All right, I'm not going to lie. This is awesome. It's not just like a fighter for melee and then a fighter for ranged attacks. They actually gave us a Paladin with Lay on Hands, Divine Sense. This is actually really cool. I'm stoked to see this. The characters, I will say, in this starter set, I automatically like more than the ones in the original starter set, just because all they had were 2 different fighters, but here we actually have a Paladin, only up to level 3, which is fine. That's some cool art there as well. But yeah, a noble human Paladin. Then we got our Cleric, Hill Dwarf Cleric with the soldier background. And, oh man, okay, I like this artwork here. I don't know what it is, but something about this just feels like old school, like AD&D basic expert kind of artwork. It might just be because he's got like the curly mustache or something, but man, I love that artwork. I think that's awesome. We have a High Elf Wizard with the Sage background, so that's pretty standard stuff as well. Pretty safe choices overall for the characters. Aside from the Paladin, which I wasn't expecting, but I'm super glad to see. But yeah, so we got the High Elf Wizard, Evocation Specialist, which makes sense. That's one that, you know, is pretty useful overall. And then we have a Wood Elf Fighter for the Archer. Again, with the folk hero background, but it's actually an Elven Archer. So yeah, the characters, they are pretty safe. I will say overall, like they didn't do anything way out of line or way out of left field. But to have an Elven Archer fighter character and a Paladin, that's awesome. And then what's left in the box is just the all too familiar Spacer. So that was the contents of the starter set itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get the contents of the 2014 starter set, lay those out, and I will do a comparison. So I will be right back. All right, so here we have the 2 sets side by side. On the left is the new 2022 starter set. On the right, we've got the 2014 starter set. First things first, the dice are basically the exact same. And they do have different numbers attached to them on the bags, but they are the exact same sort of like metallic blue swirly pattern dice, which are fine. They look great. For a starter set product, though, it might have been better if each die was a different color. They could have kept the swirl pattern and just had each die be different, so it'd be easier for new players to kind of quickly learn which dice to pick up. You could say, like, pick up the D4, and if they don't understand, just say, well, you pick up the, you know, the orange one or whatever color. But that said, you know, these are still really nice looking dice, so I'm not going to complain about these being included in any of these starter sets, because they are really nice to look at. And so yeah, there's just the set of 6 with both. And then we've got the characters here. So we do have some definite similarities between the 2 different sets for the most part, but there are some key differences as well. So we do have the human or the archer characters, which are both fighters in both the new and the older starter sets. One was a human in the original, and the new one is actually an elf archer, which I personally prefer. But there's a lot of similarity. They both have the same armor class. They both have the same initiative. Their attributes are pretty much the exact same, except for the fact that the human characters, several of their stats are 1 higher than the elf. For example, you have a 14 strength versus a 13, a 16 dex. Okay, the dex is actually lower for the human versus the elf, which makes sense because the elf will get +2 to that. Constitution is 15 instead of 14. Intelligence is 10 instead of 11. Wisdom is 13 for both because the elf would have gotten +1 to that. And Charisma for the elf is 8 versus 9 for the human. Passive Perception is the exact same. They're both using great axes. They're both using longbows. The human is a little bit better with the melee weapon because they get an extra +1 to hit and an extra +1 to damage, but the bow is the exact same for both. Here you can see again, the older characters did have the personality traits already filled in for you, whereas the new character sheets just don't include them at all. So you have to sort of assign your own background and personality to the characters. Again, for a starter set, I kind of would prefer that these were actually included because it can give new players an idea of how to play the character, kind of looking at their flaws, their ideals, you know, their different personality traits, to get an idea of how to like put themselves in that mindset. But that also being said, a blank slate is easier to project yourself onto, so it works. I guess it's just the fact that like these personality traits are my favorite parts of the creating characters, so it kind of sucks to see that we don't have it anymore. We'll just set those aside, and we have our wizard character, which in both cases is a high elf wizard, and they both look to be pretty similar as far as attributes go. So again, very samey there. Again, not that they're bad characters or anything. They're, you know, they are made using the same rule set, so it does actually make sense that there won't be a huge amount of difference. We do have the Hill Dwarf Cleric. Again, their attributes are pretty much the exact same. Their equipment, though, looks like it might be different because the dwarf in the original starter set was using a warhammer, and this one's actually using a mace and a hand axe. So a little bit of difference there. Then we have our paladin and noble fighter. Their stats are very similar as well, except here we do have a paladin versus a fighter. The fighter was using a great axe, but the paladin is using a battle axe, and I'm assuming a shield on their character sheet. So chainmail, yeah, they're using a shield. So they're using a one-handed weapon. But yeah, so similar there. And then the halfling rogue, they're both Lightfoot halfling rogues. Alignment's different. The character here in the old set was neutral. This one is chaotic good. So those were the characters. Then we've got the rule booklets. And again, yeah, the rule booklets, I would say there's a bit more comprehensive rule sets in the new starter set versus the original one. They're both about the same length overall, but we do have things like mounted combat and underwater combat that are not included in here, I don't think, at all. If they are, they don't have a header, but I don't... Yeah, they are not included in there. So I would say, so if I had to, like, you know, the characters are pretty much the same between the two sets, so that's fine. Like, none of them really have an advantage over the other. But I would say that this is probably a slightly more useful rule booklet than what was included in the 2014 set. And then we've got the adventures, and again, it comes down to adventure design. But one of the big things that we do have here is the fact that the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle is only a 42-page adventure module, whereas actually might be a little bit, it might be 46 pages, but the Lost Mine of Phandelver has 64 pages. So there's a little bit more to do, or a little bit more heft to the adventure booklet in Lost Mine of Phandelver versus Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. So I will do a separate video sort of discussing the pros and cons of the adventures, but I want to give a little bit of time to breathe between these two products because I want there to be people that are looking to run this. I don't want to be the reason that their game gets spoiled. So I'm going to save the adventure review for another time, but one thing to note is the fact that the adventure booklet is a little bit thinner compared to the Lost Mine of Phandelver. So one thing to keep in mind. So that's the contents of the starter sets, comparing the 2022 to the 2014. These are the best direct comparisons because the starter set here is meant to essentially replace the original starter set, but there is another box set that I want to compare this to as well, which is the Essentials kit. So I'm going to get that set up here, and I will show both of those off here in a moment. So I will be right back. All right, so here we have the Essentials kit set up against the starter set. Now, the one thing I forgot to mention in the previous segment is the fact that the two starter sets have the exact same US price of $19.99. However, the Canadian price was $23.99 versus $25.99. So the Canadian price for the 2014 starter set was $2 lower than the 2022 starter set. But if you're an American or you're paying US prices for everything, then the two starter sets are the exact same price. Now with the Essentials kit, it's a little bit different. The Essentials kit is $24.99 US and $33.99 Canadian. So a difference of $5 on the US side of things, and the Canadian side of things is 26 versus 34. So there's what, an $8 difference as far as that goes. But let's take a look at what you get in the Essentials kit versus the current 2022, I should say, starter set. So we'll just take a look at that here. First things first, the dice set. With the Essentials kit, you do get a kind of a more generic set of dice. So these are just the translucent red dice. However, this is a full D&D set of dice. So you've got the two 20-sided dice, so 2d20s for your advantage and disadvantage rolls, your 4d6 and your 2d10. You actually have the percentile dice in there as well. So this is a full 11 die set versus the 6 dice. So you do get a fuller set of dice here than you do get with the starter set. So one thing to keep in mind there as well. With the characters, unlike the starter sets, the Essentials kit is meant to teach new players how to make their characters. So it comes with blank character sheets. However, the classes included are the Cleric, the Fighter, the Rogue, the Wizard, and the Bard class. We also have several sheets of just game aids like initiative trackers, some rules reference cards, including the different conditions, NPCs, magic items, and things of that nature. My set actually was missing a sheet. It had one sheet that was doubled, and there was one sheet of like items stuff that was missing. So I did have to get replacements sent to me by Wizards, but they did that, and I got them pretty quickly. A little box that you can fold up to have all the cards in. Then we've got our rulebook, and the visual presentation of the rulebook is okay, but just comparing, again, we got our characters here. You know, the rulebook looks, you know, not quite as catching, you know, initially, but it has also got a different binding to it, so it's not just stapled like the current starter set is. It actually has a binding on it there. But let's take a look at the actual rules contained inside. So this is a 64-page rule book as opposed to the, 32 pages that we have here. However, it's longer because it has to have character creation information, including the races and the classes, as well as backgrounds for you to choose from. And I will say that the character's progression, I think, is like to level 5 in this, so you actually have to have more room for the character class abilities as well. So you actually go up to 6th level, so they got quite a bit of stuff that they have to do there. We do have similar artwork though, so I don't know if that's taken from the same thing or not. Let's just see if we can find that particular sketch art to see if any of the art is recycled. It's cool to see, like I do like the sketch artwork that we have there, but let's just see again if it is board. It might not be, actually, come to think of it. Oh, no, okay. The same artwork does appear there, but yeah, it's their art. They can reuse it if they want. I'm not gonna fault them necessarily for that, just filler art. But this is actually the sketch that they have for the Paladin character on the back of the sheet. So it does borrow a little bit more art than I actually thought it did. Actually, that's reproduced there too. So, and that one, okay. So, one or two things would be fine, but there's a little bit more borrowed artwork than I would have expected. The rest of the artwork does seem to be unique between the two, however. And a few different spells. There'd be more spells included in here because it goes up to level 6 characters. And then we got some sidekicks introduced there. Then we have the Dragon of Icespire Peak. Again, this is got some binding to it. as opposed to the adventure booklet in the starter set, which again is just sort of staple bound. But this is not like it's not a comprehensive adventure. It's more like a series of side quests that are loosely connected. So that, again, comes down to what your preference is as a DM. Do you like to run adventures that are like more focused and have like a clearer plot from point A to point B, or do you prefer just to have the series of shorter things? Again, when this was designed, the Essentials kit was designed with one-shots and like live streaming more in mind than I feel like this one has. Also included in the Essentials kit is a Dungeon Master screen. It is a thinner cardstock, which of course has a fair amount of space dedicated to conditions, because why wouldn't it? But it does include the screen there, which is nice to see, and some really cool artwork in there as well. And it has a map of the Sword Coast region, along with the town of Fandalen on the other side there. So you've got the Sword Coast region, Neverwinter area, and Fandalen there. So you get a little bit more in the Essentials kit, but you are paying more. So that is one thing to keep in mind as well. But those were a look at comparing the contents between the two. So what I'm going to do now is clean things back up, and I'm going to give you my first impressions at the very least here. So I will be right back with that. So we've taken a look at the contents of these Dragons of Stormwreck Isle, as well as comparing it to the contents of the 2014 starter set and the D&D Essentials kit. Now I'm going to say right off the bat, comparing the new starter set to the Essentials kit isn't really fully fair, only because this is meant to be a more comprehensive experience, and this is meant to replace the original starter set. So I'm going to set this aside for now. I'm just going to talk about these two here very briefly, and sort of like I said, this is my first impressions, my early impressions, and for, you know, just to be clear, I haven't actually read the full adventure in the new starter set yet. I literally took the plastic off right before I sat down to record. So the adventure itself is going to be sort of the make or break, which it was for the original starter set. But just comparing these two products together, these are the same price as far as US dollars are concerned, and they are formatted very similarly. You've got the same sets of dice with the 6 dice, which I am a little disappointed in. I have to say, honestly, this should have had a full set of 11 dice, especially considering the fact that the last 2 box sets had a full set of 11 dice in there. This one really should have had that, or at the very least, should have had 2d20, because advantage and disadvantage requires you to roll 2d20 and take the better or worse result. So it would have been nice to be able to roll those both at the same time. So going back to the 6 sets of dice, or the set of 6 dice, is unfortunate. It's a little bit of a letdown. The rule booklet in here, I will say, I prefer over the rule booklet in the original starter set, just by including things like mounted combat and underwater combat. Not that you're going to use those rules a lot, but just the fact that they are actually included here, it just gives you a little bit more that you can reference in this rule book versus this one. So not that I necessarily see myself taking the rule book for quick reference or anything like that when I go to run my current games, but if I had to, I would definitely be taking this one over that one. The characters themselves that are included are pretty much the exact same. They are made using the same rules, the same kind of like ability score, arrangements and stuff like that. So there's not really a lot that they could have done differently. It would have been nice to see some more differentiation between like the race and class combinations. But we do have an elven fighter versus a human fighter for the archer character, and it's nice to have a paladin versus just 2 different fighters. So the characters, I think, overall are still better in the new starter set than what they were here, just because there's a bit more differentiation between the 2, like martial, the main martial characters. The other ones, again, are all pretty much the same, which is not bad. Like they're decent combinations, so I'm not going to complain about that. But just the fact that they made the archer an elf, which is my favorite combination to play, and they had a paladin, the characters get the edge in the new starter set over the old one. The major determining factor, though, is going to be the adventure itself. Now, I have yet to read the adventure in here, so this is, like I said, just an early impressions based on just the unboxing portion of what I've done here so far. But there is only 48 pages of adventure here versus 64 pages of adventure here. So you are losing a fair amount of page count for the module itself. That said, at $20 US, you're going to get $20 US worth of enjoyment out of this starter set. So at the end of it, at the end of everything, these two are pretty on par as far as the contents are concerned. This one has some advantages over this one, and this one has some advantages over this one. That said, though, I think if I had to choose which box set I would recommend to beginners, it's still going to be the D&D Essentials Kit, because the Essentials Kit is more expensive. It's $5 more for the Essentials Kit in US dollars, and it's $8 more in terms of Canadian dollars, but you're getting much more in terms of value out of that $5 US or $8 Canadian. First of all, you're getting the full set of 11 dice. You're getting the percentile dice. You're getting the 2d20. You're getting the 4d6. And having multiple d6 is also good because rogues have backstab, and backstab uses multiple d6. So you're just getting a better set of dice in here. You're getting the Dungeon Master screen, which it's not like the thick cardstock that we have for the standalone screens that you can purchase separately, but the screen alone, along with the extra dice, makes up that extra $5 worth of value. Also, I personally prefer having the players make their characters for a couple of different reasons. Number one, they get to customize their character a little bit more, and you typically get more attached to a character of your own design versus one that was just pre-made and you just chose off of a pile. You also get some more unique things you can do in terms of combinations. With the Essentials Kit, you can make a Dwarven Bard, you can make a Halfling Fighter, you can have an Elven Thief. Like, there's just different options that you can have with the Essentials Kit that you just can't with the pre-gen characters, because the pre-gen characters are what they are. They fill all the roles that you need. They've got your healer, they've got your rogue character, they have your arcane spellcaster, they have your frontline melee fighter, and they have your range support. And that's what, those are the important roles to fill, and this one fills it really well. But just being able to make your character, like I said, the customization is overall a little bit better as far as I'm concerned, and having new players fill out their character sheets themselves does give them more familiarity with the layout of the sheet. So I think overall, I still think the Essentials Kit is the best option to go with out of all three of these. That said, though, the starter set, it's decent for what it is. It's not great, at least until I read the adventure. I would say that this is kind of an average product that is unfortunately a bit of a step back from what we had here. And again, it just comes down to the dice. If they would have had a full set of 11 dice, I think that this would have been a much better, recommendation than what I can do right now, which is, wait for the adventure review, which is going to come out in a few days' time. But for now, it's lateral movement from this to this, and it's a step back from the Essentials Kit, unfortunately, to the starter set. So I can't fully recommend it yet. Wait for the adventure review, but you're gonna get your money's worth out of this. But I think for a few dollars more, you're just gonna get way more value out of the Essentials Kit. And at this point in time, this is still my ultimate recommendation. But we'll see if that changes when I do the review for the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle adventure, which will be coming out in a few days' time. Until then, thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Take care.